Good morning.
Happy Monday. What's going on?
Happy Monday. Best day of the week. There you go. Turn on that light. Dude, I love that we're matching today unintentionally. The little mint on mint color going on. It's
It
kind of
was
like
I saw you pre-show and I went and changed. So
oh, nice. How'd you wow, look at you, dude. Such a good co-host. Just
I
trying to
know.
step up.
I tried to grow a beard real
Awesome.
quick, but that didn't
Yeah.
happen. I need like
Yeah.
a
Almost
month's notice.
hey, next month we'll get
Yeah.
you
All right.
started,
Perfect.
Dude, I'm excited for this episode. There's a lot to cover. I think like the industry just kind of threw a lot at us this last week. Thankfully, that's job security for us. But dude, how was
Yeah.
the week before? How was the weekend?
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. Some weeks, we come up with our own topics and others 5 or 6 topics present themselves. So looking forward to getting
Yeah,
into that. There's definitely a common thread of the topics we'll be discussing today, but
for sure.
weekend was good. It's nice and hot, but ready for fall and September and college football and not a 90-degree heat.
I know I was gonna say this is actually the first day in Colorado, probably in the last month, I've been able to wear a hoodie. Just because it's kind of chilly this morning. It's not 85 degrees by the time I wake up at 6. It's a good feeling to have. So I'm
Right.
always down for that. Um, Perfect. Well, before we jump in to story of the week and to all the other topics, give a quick shout out to Biscayne Bay Coffee. If you are not drinking your coffee this morning with us, then you need to go order it right now at biscaynecoffee.com. Use the code good morning, get 10% off. And on top of that, 10% of it goes to helping the wildlife in the Biscayne Bay because it's such a great cause with great coffee. I think it's a great mission. We love working with them. So shout out
And I
Steve
feel
Turk and Biscayne.
and I feel like a model every time you talk about it and I have a sip.
That's perfect. Perfect timing.
The only
Subliminal
modeling job
messaging.
I've ever had in my life. So it
Probably
happens.
the last one too you'll get. Um, but outside of that, I am excited. You want to just jump into story of the week and we'll say hi to grandma and get the show rolling?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go.
Story of the week. The Great Resignation continues on, and it doesn't matter at what level of an employee you are. It can hit anybody and everybody. So this week it hit Joe Gebbia, founder of Behemoth Airbnb. After what must have been a 12-year run, Joe has decided to take a step back. I think he's going to retain a board seat, but it'll be interesting how this affects Airbnb long term. I can't imagine Nate and Brian stepping away anytime soon. But if and when they do, when the founders depart, a piece of them goes, and a piece of what they represent in the org goes. Joe is kind of known for a lot of the side projects like Airbnb Hotel or the pods in the backyard, coming up with and testing out a lot of crazy new ideas. So we'll see if that continues, that legacy continues within Airbnb after his departure. But congrats, Joe. We'll see you on the other side.
The other side of $1 billion, I think. It's but
Yeah, I mean, there's also that. Like, he
yeah,
never has to work again, and his kids never have to work again, and his
yeah,
grandkids never have to work again, and their grandkids don't ever have to work again. But,
yeah.
as long as they're responsible. I think I saw a stat that generational wealth in America only lasts on average 3 generations. So
Jeez.
there's some screw ups that happen with, kids of billionaires. So be careful.
Yeah.
Raise your kids
Don't
right.
give raise your kids right. Don't give them all the money right away. Let them earn their keep, figure out their mission and passion in life first before they actually have funds and access to the funds. Is always a good play. But some other interesting things I think that we've seen through some more stories are going to come out through what we've seen on LinkedIn and just all this other stuff. But early stage funding, I think I've talked about this a few times. I want to get your take on it because obviously it's going to roll into more stuff that we're going to talk about in the episode. But I think we've seen a big slowdown in funding overall. Series A, Series B's, pre-seed, seeds, all the stuff. Like we're not seeing the headlines as much. I'm seeing a lot more, at least in the kind of like European travel startup side. Not a lot on the US, but we just see, you go to FocusWire right now, and Q Stay lands a $6.5 million accelerated hospitality fund, basically. Um, Never heard of Q Stay in my life, but they just received 6.5 million. Um, so I don't know. I
Yeah,
just
funds are still out there. Multiples are heavily diminished. If you were a startup with good traction, trying to raise at a 20x multiple, then now bring that back to earth and you're getting somewhere between 5 and 10. So that's really the biggest hit. And I think right now what we're seeing in the US is kind of a push pull between companies that still think it's 2021 and the multiples that they heard their friends getting versus what's reality now. And we talked about this, must have been 4 or 5 months ago, how the economy kind of trickles down. So the first thing that gets hit is the public markets, and then it trickles into um, like private equity, and then late stage investment, and then early stage investment. So we've now hit some of the early stage investment pieces. That doesn't mean money's gone and dried up. Good companies will still get money and get invested in. It just means there's less money chasing good companies than there was last year. And a lot of the investors are reserving their cash for follow-on investment in case companies are struggling to get through the next 2 years. Now that'll come at a price. They'll have a reduction. It'll likely be a down round, but that's okay. The company can exist, get through whatever downturn we're in. But what the knock-on effect there is, as early stage funding slows, there's going to be more M&A activity.
mhm.
And congrats to Avantio this week. They got acquired by a company called Planet, who I have never heard of before. But that's
Yeah, I was gonna say the same same on my end. I was like,
but yeah,
okay,
look, if they do payments and Avantio has 80,000 properties, you plug in a payments platform on top of that, and Planet's going to make their investments back real quick
yeah,
on the purchase of Avantio. So good, seems like surface level a good acquisition. Again, I know almost nothing about the company that acquired them, but I've known a good number of the Avantio folks. So congrats to each and every one of you. Well done. Hope you enjoy working at the new company or made some money on the transaction. But again, not the first, won't be the last. I know there's kind of for a fact there's a couple more kind of in the pipeline. So
yeah.
we'll see more and we'll report on them as they become public.
For sure. And gonna say another shout out to, Simon Lehman, who we mentioned earlier when we kind of talked about the slowing of funding, right? Like we saw the shift a while ago. And again, Simon Lehman, AJL behind the purchase and acquisition of Avantio. I wouldn't be surprised if again we start seeing more and more of this as well, because that's some big leadership in that side of the industry for them. So
Well,
very
we
cool to
know
see.
we know it's going to happen. It's just, I mean, that's the cycle that we're in.
Yeah,
So yeah, hopefully people can make some money on the transactions. It might not be as much as you were hoping when you started your company, but a win's a win. So don't knock it if you can get one and team up with a good sister company or a good parent company. do it.
Yeah. And I was gonna ask you because I'm curious to, like, I know we're gonna see a lot more acquisition and roll up. I'm wondering if we're gonna start to see this like the sign of this is going to be through integrations first. Our companies going to start integrating with each other, creating more strategic partnerships instead of just, hey, we're going to integrate with everybody, right? Like every property management software usually is probably just pushing and pushing and pushing integrations, right? They want to be as connected to everybody as possible. Do you think we're going to see more integrations come first to then lead into partnerships? They're going to test the water through integration, or are we going to just see companies like Planet, who we've never heard of, come in and buy a big name that we've all heard of in the space?
Yeah, I mean, just speculating here, it's a lot easier to get an integration done than an acquisition done.
Mhm.
You've seen GSV, which rebranded to uh, somebody help me here. I know one of our listeners can chime in, but they've tried this roll up, and I think it's going okay, or pretty well. But being able to tie in an ecosystem, a closed loop ecosystem, can be helpful. You can drive prices down. You can, hook your customer to use all of your different softwares across platforms. I think I think ultimately we're going to see more people from outside of the space moving into it
Mhm.
and having their software inhabit. There it is. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Because I was totally drawing a blank on it. But I think we'll see more companies from outside the space start dipping their toe in hospitality, or from hospitality into short-term rentals, to
Yeah,
have an exposure to it. Then we will see a whole lot of consolidation of, PMS by another PMS buys another PMS. Could happen. I mean, those certainly exist too, but more likely to follow the Inhabit, Goldman Sachs private
mhm.
equity play to roll up a pseudo closed ecosystem.
Yeah. The one thing I'm seeing too, just through the Slick Talk podcast, just interviewing founders, right? Like, there's a lot of property management softwares out there. I'm sure I could do a 10 episode series on 10 different founders and 10 different property management softwares, if not more episodes. But the one thing I'm seeing now, and I wouldn't say it's like consolidation, but I think we're seeing a lot, like you said, a lot of people from outside of the industry come into the industry with similar backgrounds, like e-commerce, or whether it's device and like IoT, building and all this other stuff. But, the property management software side is very heavy in hotels, short-term rentals. I'm sure plenty of other industries, whether it's cruise lines or airline, all this other booking, anything booking related, management, reservation related is very popular. But I'm starting to see more and more of like these unique companies. Like, you don't hear a lot of, like, I'm not going to say names, but like Noise or all these other different niche companies, right? Like, there wasn't a lot, but now you start to see one or two kind of come into the space, especially when it comes to like ordering furniture or whatever. So it's very interesting to see the lack of competition start to slowly grow, where you're not like, oh, there used to be very little competitors with this company, but now there's kind of one, two, three, maybe four, kind of popping out, and it's very
Yeah,
interesting to watch.
competition is good. If you're the only one doing one thing for a long period of time, you're
Yeah,
probably on the verge of crazy. But if you have competition, that helps. It helps amplify the education of the market and all of that.
for
It
sure.
also helps with potential acquisitions or mergers in the future. If your competitors are really strong in one segment and you're really strong in another, even if you
100%.
hate them, it might make sense to team up with them.
Yeah.
Now, what we talked about at the top of the show, early stage funding slowing, it's a challenging time, especially for capital intensive startups to get going. Um, but you know, good on the founders. I'm one of them. We're not terribly capital intensive, but
Yeah.
we are starting a company in the start of a potential recession. So, there's people that are crazy enough to go out and and give it a go. But it's if you're very capital intensive, it's a very bold move right now.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. But speaking of competition, I think it's a great segue into our next segment of Verbo becoming the most downloadable or downloaded travel app, not downloadable, downloaded travel app, uh, which is crazy because it received 10 million downloads the first half of the year, which is a little bit more than what it did all of last year. Um, and so we did a poll to LinkedIn. So if you didn't see the poll this morning, I'll comment it on the stream here so you can go put your vote in. But we want to know, are you seeing more Verbo bookings over Airbnb? Because as Gold and I were putting this episode together, this was one of the topics, and it's a great topic because we've always seen Airbnb dominating. But the big thing that we're curious about is, does downloads on an app equal bookings? And I think we answered this question together, but Golden, your opinion was no, it's just a sign or early sign of shift in market search, right? People are now wanting to search outside of what they're already
Yeah, and
used to.
just because people are downloading your app, like that's a good sign. You're getting exposure, marketing's working. Then it comes down to customer experience and being able to convert those eyeballs into bookings.
Mm-hmm.
What I found super interesting, the 6 months prior to, I guess, the end of 2021, all of our LinkedIn feeds were filled with Hopper being the most downloaded app.
Yeah,
So, the Hopper sales pitch was, we have Gen Z travelers downloading our app, and more eyeballs is more bookings. Well, now that trend, Hopper's down the list. I didn't see the entire list, but I think they were not even in the top 5.
they
Um,
were not doing super hot. It was Google Maps, Booking.com, Uber, and then you got like Lyft and a few of those other ones sticking out first. Airbnb went from fifth to ninth, so that's the biggest
yeah, and
drop
I
there.
think like sure seems to me like Verbo's eating up market share from Hopper and Airbnb, at least with likely the younger crowd who's downloading apps.
Yeah,
We've seen a lot of stories about the Airbnb fees and the hidden cameras and this and that. Um, you and I both know that most of these properties are on all of these platforms,
yes,
but being able to see the shift in traveler ex- exposure, if nothing else, away from Airbnb and downloading Verbo, people now know they have alternatives. They might be price shopping. They might just have had a bad experience on Airbnb and don't want to use it anymore.
100%.
I saw an article this weekend of a host that Airbnb, on day of check-in, Airbnb just yanked the money away from them because the guest's flight was canceled. So now the host doesn't get a payout because the guest's flight was canceled.
Yeah,
How is Airbnb controlling that decision and that money? Shouldn't be happening. So,
yeah,
um, people might be encouraging their guests to book through Verbo now instead of Airbnb. Um, so well
well,
done, Verbo. Like the whatever ads you're doing seem to be working.
mhm.
Do we have any early results yet, Will, on the poll?
Early results would be right now. It would be three. I would say 75% say Airbnb is still high. 25% saying no. They're seeing an increase in Verbo. We did get a quote from our awesome new co-host who is joining us next week, Brandy Canali. She did text me last night or Sunday afternoon saying that they get 9.5 times more Airbnb bookings than they do Verbo. And obviously a big reason for that is that they're in urban markets and they're full building units rather than single family homes. And I think you and I both know that single family homes obviously perform a lot better on Verbo. That's normally the traveler. It's not a single person looking for a spare room or
Mhm.
and maybe a couple that can get a full house,
Yeah.
but it's definitely the
Vrbo
go ahead.
largely conceded that market to Airbnb during the pandemic when they offloaded Pillow and Apartment Jet. They basically said
Mhm.
we're done trying to compete on the urban market. My guess is they'll be back in due time, but right now leisure markets and ADRs are high enough to support the decision to not go after additional kind of urban markets and chew into Airbnb's space there. And if this trend of app downloads leads to bookings in the next 6 months, then they don't need to look at changing any strategy anytime soon. So well done, Team Verbo. I guess earnings will come out soon. I haven't checked,
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a good trend, and all in all, that's what as you want to. A lot of us want to see a rebalance of bookings where
hmm
75% or 9 in 1 aren't coming from a single source because you've essentially built your business on the backbone of someone else's business.
yeah,
I am not saying in no means don't use OTAs. You should absolutely use OTAs. You pay them to do marketing for you, and
100%.
they do a great job of marketing for you. Um, but be cognizant of the balance that you have, and try and make sure you're not entirely reliant on one channel. Because I mean, look, anything could happen, right? Craziness could happen. Chesky could get in trouble with the SEC for something, and Airbnb stock tanks, reputation tanks, and then if you don't have exposure on other platforms and the travelers are fleeing in droves, then
hmm
you're behind the eight ball because sometimes some of these platforms it takes a long time to get up and running on. Um,
100%.
so just be hedged. Use all the platforms. Try and push them to your favorite platform when you can, but or direct. But don't be so reliant on a single company.
100%. And I was going to say it's a perfect shout out for the Book Direct show coming up in Miami. I think that's the biggest message we're trying to get across is that it's not anti OTA. It's not like you need to get off all the OTAs. You need to ban Airbnb and ban booking.com and all these things on your properties. It's really building off that funnel, pushing the whole point of these OTAs is that they're doing the marketing for you. It's a lower cost than what you would probably pay for paid advertising on Google or Facebook or Instagram. And so just accept that fee, take that cost, but start pushing your guests towards your site, towards your email list, towards your brand. Because that's where, when COVID hit, we had one property. It was a castle, not in Europe or anything cool, but in the United States. And immediately we lost in one day within a couple hours of the no travel quarantine stay home 2 weeks to flatten the curve type deal. We lost 125K in revenue. 125K just gone, and that was only about a month's worth of reservations. So to imagine the impact that a platform can do to your business like that, it's pretty significant. So again, shout out to Book Direct show coming up in Miami in October. um, and hopefully we'll see you all there for the Destination Air Awards and the Book Direct show in total.
Yeah, and I mean, to my knowledge, Airbnb is the only one that controls your income and the payouts. So you're a little safer on booking and I think Hopper and definitely Verbo. But when a company can unilaterally make a decision on your behalf about your money,
Mhm.
that's a concern, right? We've talked about that on this show for years, but
Yeah,
it's definitely a concern. And it doesn't matter how stringent your cancellation terms are, they
yeah.
can change them. They can do whatever they
Mhm.
want. They've got
As
the
you
money
just
in their
heard, if they're
they've got the money
if
in
they're
their bank and you don't. So
yeah. Well, as I say, as you just said, like they had their flight canceled that day and they pulled it that day. So pretty intense if you don't ask me. But
um, but I mean, as a traveler,
yeah,
that's probably where you want to book, right?
Yeah,
If
100%.
you can get your money back for just about any reason, then may as well. Jennifer, could the increase in Verbo downloads be because many of the previous Verbo users were just on the website and now they're getting the app? It could be.
I
I
think Verbo's normally the older generation that books desktop, right? Like, not everybody. Like, I've booked on Verbo before, but I'm just that I could see that, knowing that if you're normally used to
Well, what
booking
you
that
just
way.
said, Will, was that the older generation still books on desktop. The new younger generation downloads the app.
Mhm.
So I do think it is a shift in age demographics within Verbo. But we will see. I'm sure this fall at one of the conferences, someone's going to have stats on age demographics.
Mhm.
We might even have some stats from Jamie at AirDNA that can
Yeah,
share some of that with us. But it it tells me, anecdotally speaking, that the age is shifting downwards for Verbo, which is a good thing because I think historically their average booking came from a family, typically a
yeah.
female booking that's between the ages of 45 and 55. But if more apps are coming in, then there's potential that is moving downstream a little bit.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Good questions, good comments. We love the live engagement. Just at least I love it. I don't know if Michael loves it, but I'll say for myself, I love it.
We have to have our morning coffee.
100%. That's why we gotta be on top of it for everybody that's watching in live. We appreciate all the comments. We love all the feedback that we get behind the scenes of the show. But I want to transition before we fully wrap up. Is that we announced last week when we had Mike Baxter on from House of Gods Hotels. The guy's incredible. That was such a fun episode. So if you didn't hear it, you need to go check out the story and kind of what they're doing. And it really ties into this experiential hospitality, diversification, controlling your brand over your OTAs. We dove into a lot of that those topics with Mike. Fascinating guy. Would love to meet up with him in person one day. But to know plant the seed again. Last week, we announced that Brandy Canali, who's the COO of Sex and Stays, is going to be joining us as a monthly co host the first Monday of every month. She'll be joining us on the show. And we just wanted to kind of make this shift in the show. We're seeing um, the audience, anyone who's watching live, watching the replay, listening right now, you guys are kind of really controlling the way this goes in a lot of ways outside of the news. We cover news, but we're hearing that people want new and exciting, and they like me and Michael, but we want to get other voices in the industry, and so Brandy was a natural reach out for us. She just has a great understanding of operations, very articulate. She's very well diverse when it comes to property type and experience in the industry. So, hence, that was a big reason. And we will announce another co host that is coming on monthly to start to give us some more data and analytical and really solid numbers background when it comes to a lot of these topics that we're discussing. We can't announce yet. It's
And
soon to
call
be
us out
confirmed.
on times that we're incorrect.
Yes, he may or may not own Michael Golden's house right now, but who knows? Um, yeah, so it's exciting times. We're really excited about the show and where it's going. So we just want to say thank you to everyone who's been supporting, to all of our listeners that listen on Spotify, on Apple. We're gonna be making some changes um, based on the feedback that we get, and it's exciting for us because sometimes doing the same old thing over and over again with just the two of us, which we talk a lot, so it can get a little stale, not stale. I don't know, a little, whatever you call it. But we just want to say thank you to everybody who's been really supporting the change and the shift in the show, and we're excited for our new co-host to be joining us this coming up month. So it's very exciting. And before we hit the outro, Golden, do you have anything else to add for our listeners and watchers out there today?
Yeah, keep the news cycles coming. It helps with the show. It helps with the narratives. It's also cool to see how many of the headlines actually tie in together with themes and predictions that we often talk about. So
Mhm.
keep doing cool things.
I like it. All right. Well, you heard it here first. We'll see you all next week on Good Morning Hospitality. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and repeat with all your friends and family. We'll see you all next Monday.